Today, we have on stage 4 people who I personally have grown up reading, who I personally admire. I was one of the first interns of the Swarajya magazine. So, today Swarajya is a very important publication. Again, creating so much of, throwing so much light, bringing so much clarity on issues concerning India today, and Jaggi's articles, his writings are extremely well followed. And even to this day, if there is an issue on which I need clarity, on which I want to understand what is good for India, is Jaggi's articles that I go back to and I read and learn. Many of my parliament speeches I have borrowed heavily from Jaggi's writings. So we have 4 stalwarts today with us. On behalf of all of you, I want to solicit, I want to acknowledge their presence and thank all of them for the contribution they all have done. Friends, I want to, as briefly as possible, try to put in context the very important work Rajiv Malhotra and Vijaya Vishwanathan has brought before all of us. Colonization is a constant process. Colonization did not stop in 1947. Its modes and its methods have only changed and transformed. It has only gotten more subtle, more sophisticated, and more nuanced. Perhaps there is no better quote than that of John Henrik Clarke to understand the debilitating effects of colonization on the colonizer's mind. He says, and I quote, "To control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves and how they regard their history and culture." Let me repeat this. To control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves and how they regard their history and culture. And when your conqueror makes you ashamed of your culture and your history, he needs no prison walls and no chains to hold you. So these renewed waves of colonization in today's era, where all pervasive, omniscient digital technologies are bringing it to our doorsteps at unprecedented speed, it is very important that counter responses, counter intellectual responses by effective scholars are made essential. It is in this context that this book, Snakes in the Ganga, the metaphor itself is very instructive and educative. The Ganga, while all of us consider as the holiest of the holy rivers, can also shelter snakes which can be deadly and poisonous. Many people on our side of the spectrum, who are well-meaning intellectuals, well-meaning influential billionaires, influential industrialists, many a time support causes and projects which are the handiwork of what the original book called the Breaking India Forces. A case in point in recent memory was a magnanimous grant given by a very reputed Bangalore-based foundation to translate works of Sheldon Pollock, which, thanks to certain people on our side who ensured that it didn't go through would even have gotten the stamp of approval by a very, very reputed, authoritative, traditional mutt of India. So this is the kind of challenge that we are facing today. The Marxist worldview, in essence, treats the society as a perpetual fight between A versus B. This outlook of the Marxists is in direct contradiction to the Vedantic view, which believes in the idea of sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, that there must be eternal harmony and eternal peace. If a Marxist looks at a family, he does not look at it as a harmonious partnership between a man and wife, a husband and wife. It is an unequal partnership where it's a perpetual fight between a husband versus a wife. The same framework, when applied to a school, is a teacher versus a student. The same framework, when applied to society, is upper caste versus lower caste, whites versus blacks, rich versus poor, industrialist versus the union, the employee versus the employer. So this is essentially a framework which perpetuates eternal conflict. This fundamentally, at its very root, incentivizes a particular individual or a person to perpetually play a victim card and weaponize the identity of victimhood and use it for political divisions. We have seen this at play in the United States, we have seen this at play in Europe, we have also seen this at play in the last so many years in our very own country. So these basic frameworks have to be challenged. If these are the colonization, the nuanced, sophisticated, academic colonizations, the political narrative colonizations that are taking place at one level, we also witness how, even in our dress codes, sometimes I wonder, if you visit the civil court in Chennai, Professor Vaidya will relate, in the peak of summer, a lawyer is expected to dress up in a three-piece suit with a all-black gown. And it's a dress that doesn't even suit this country's culture, this country's climate. So the colonization that has set in and is taking different forms must be contested at various levels. Even very recently, you must have observed, there was this this artist who became extremely popular on Instagram and Twitter. He was a groundnut seller from a village in West Bengal. It was quite a very popular reel. I don't remember the song today. Kacha Badam, that's the one, right? So, after the initial success, this one of the top brands, I think Z or some label, some music label like this, produced a more, a studio quality version of this guy, and his interview started going around. Within a week's time, we saw the change in his attire. There was no tilak on his forehead. His dress, which was so thoroughly Indian and so thoroughly rustic, changed to a three-piece suit. Because now he was successful. And success has a certain way it should look, and that is the Western way. So this is how, at both the popular culture level as well as the academic and political narratives level, the colonization project is going on unfettered. Added to this, we all are living in the day and age where opaque algorithms are deciding what we choose when we go to eat, what clothes we want to buy, to the prime minister we want to elect. And these algorithms are all written by individuals who have certain political ideological preferences. All these big tech companies have people at extremely influential positions who have unwittingly consumed, without critical thinking, this woke garbage. And this is extremely dangerous because these tech giants and tech corporations wield more power than presidents and prime ministers of nations. For the first time in human history, we have handed over the power to shape public opinion and human consciousness to a few opaque algorithms whose ideological biases cannot be audited. These tech corporations, most of which are based out of Silicon Valley, which Rajiv Malhotra very painstakingly through evidence proves, is, along with the Harvard University, the hotbed for this new wokeism. These corporations are controlling the political narrative of the world today. Also, the other very important point that all of us need to take away from the book, which is extremely relevant in today's globalized context, is that if these narratives are not met with effective, credible, and intelligent responses, they will have disastrous results, not just for India, not just for Bharat, but for Bharatiyas around the world. And today, while we are enjoying the news reports of Indian origin CEOs taking leadership positions in multinational companies, there may not be a day very far if these responses, these woke arguments, if left unmet, that the very large number of extremely capable, talented Indians who are in these multinational corporations around the world, the Indian diaspora, who have risen through their merit and hard work, are discriminated in the most devastating manner and are literally thrown to wolves. So it is very important that these intellectual responses are given to protect and preserve the Indian diaspora, the Bharatiya diaspora at large as well. Friends, it is in this context that this book is extremely important. There is so much more that we can say, but I urge all of you to read this, and there's a very interesting panel discussion that all of us have. The book also mentions very briefly about the now very prevalent cancel culture. I just want to spend 30 seconds on this because I myself was a victim of this when I visited Australia. But thanks to the Australian government, which did not budge to the pressure of these leftists, this cancel culture did not gain traction during my visit there. However, all of you have seen how recently in the United Kingdom, this same cancel culture was used not just by academics, but also complemented by street violence, and how our temples and how the Bharatiya diaspora in United Kingdom was a victim of this. I believe that those who believe in this ideology, the new wokeism, all of them are very fervent and ardent followers of Idi Amin, who believed that I can guarantee you freedom of speech, but I can't guarantee you freedom after speech. We have traditionally, civilizationally been a culture which has celebrated unfettered freedom of expression, thought, and debate. This is a culture which celebrated the debates between Mandana Mishra and Adi Shankara. This is a culture which, even if you go to the remotest of villages, whether even it is in Manipur or whether it is in Kumbakonam, you will hear stories of debate, discussions, and harmonious, I underline again, harmonious differences. This is something that is vital to human civilization and its growth. While this book is an extremely important step towards meeting these intellectual, academic responses, I also feel that as Bharatiyas, there are two important things that we must do. One is that we must truly live the life of Bharatiyas. And by that I mean, we must speak our languages, we must wear our clothes, we must learn our traditional arts and music, we must celebrate our festivals in all fervor. These will keep us grounded and these will keep us immune from these woke narratives. In addition to that, I also feel that post 2014, we are truly blessed with a political climate in India and outside, where we need not just restrict ourselves to responding to the intellectual responses coming from the West, but also very prominently and vociferously provide for alternatives. This is a civilization which has sent millions of monks to China, to Japan, to Southeast Asia, and help those nations understand our worldview and assimilate our worldview. Our ancestors, like Rajaraja Chola, went beyond the shores of this country and transmitted and helped assimilate people in other cultures, people in other geographies, the true values of this civilization. The time has now come for us not just to respond, but to also vociferously put forth our alternative worldview. I think in this global context, in this very important political context, snakes in the Ganga is going to be a very, very important educative primer for everybody who is interested in India's future. I thank Rajiv Malhotra and Vijaya Vishwanathan for having taken such painstaking efforts to put this book. Thank you so much, and we all look forward to reading this book in full. Thank you so much, sir.